Right. The structural energies of energy production in the area of this particular device is something which is going to be for the future. Now, all of this structures and all of its form is something that's going to produce an energy saturation for space. Now, the saturation of energy and the release of the saturation of energy is the release of the saturation of the actual energy itself. Now, the idea is that we build these things in this technological development and with the materials that we've got so far, because we know how it functions and works and we know what it's capable of and what it can do. We then take all of this, which is this central core here, this central core of the blue, eventually will be turned into a crystal rod. So all these components and all this functionality that is built out of the metals and the materials that are surrounding it, all of it will be turned into one product, which is a single crystal rod. Now, the single crystal rod will have all the properties and all the capabilities of the central core of this particular design structure. And the crystal rod will be placed inside its same casing. The casing will be the same, won't change. So this casing, which is this white object, will have a central crystal rod in it, and it will just slip straight through into the middle of it, and it will become a well-known saturated technology for energy saturation. The crystal rod will be tempered to the point where it will be tough enough to be able to manage the build-up of temperature, to manage the build-up of heat, and also to manage the build-up of the energy structures that we're going to put through it and into it. It will be a saturated crystal rod, and the more it saturates, the more energy it will hold. Now, the idea is that once it's been saturated with the relevant density of energy, that saturation will have a release mechanism that will allow it to turn the structure of its saturated energy into a powerful waveform. Now, the powerful waveform will be something that will be released through the crystal and will come out of the crystal at one end. And it all depends on how we're going to allow the energy to exit the device. Now, you can have it so it is in a focal pointed beam, or you can have it where it's feathered and it basically is a widespread energy. A widespread energy is probably something that I would go for because it's a good push on space and it will boost, but it's a device that will need charging. If we can manage the technology correct in the order of how we're going to manipulate it, if we can keep the structure of the bursts of energy up and running and release, let's say, segments of the rod, so we have a certain length of a rod, we have a certain area where they are segmented off in the rod, and each segment releases its energy through the crystal. Now, each segment will release its energy all the way through the existing rods. So you can either release the energy of the first segment, which is at the back end, and force that all the way through the other structures of energy, or you can release it at the beginning, the first segment, and release that out. Then the other one is charged, ready to go, we release that one out. The other one is charged, ready to go, release that, until they're all empty of energy. But let's say you've got it timed where you've got energy saturation and energy steeping being held in a structural form of a crystal designed specifically to hold the energy, is then that when the first one is ready to be released and charged, you then release the last one, and this one's ready to go, and then the next one's ready to go, the next one's ready to go. So you could time the energy releases through the different design structures. At the moment, all I've got is a solid crystal rod, and it's been designed specifically to hold energy. Now, it's saturated energy of solar energy, but it's also been designed to steep up energy from internal electrical sources, where you can turn electrical energy into the crystal rod. So you can charge it up with electrical energy instead of saturated energy, and charge the thing up all the way through to electrical energy, and then you release the energy. Now, storing the energy and holding the energy in place is something which I use, which is electromagnetics. Also helps to control the flow of the energy, and it also helps to manipulate the energy. So the design structure, even though is built in this format, and I'll admit not very well because of these overlaps, but if you can imagine that these circles are not overlapping and that they're actually touching one another instead to build this structure of a form, then we're going to turn all of this, which is evidence and proof that you can create energy, build energy and release energy, to energy rods, right? So at the moment we're using a crystal metal, which is this metal rod in the actual structure, which will be the release of the energy because it flows through the crystal rod. The other structures of density, which is this chamber here, which is the blue area, that's the area where you hold the energy. That energy is contained energy. The metal rods is the trigger for energy release, and these are particle streamers. So these are all stream particles all at the same time. So because this stuff is so important when it comes to the manipulation of the energy structure, then the designing of a new engine, which is a light drive engine, is based all upon this particular task. So this is how you build the tools for light drive and the tools for energy structures to be able to manipulate light drive engines. Now, because it's crystal and because it's also ceramic all at the same time, and you will have various areas of management. So the outer casing, which is the white part here, will be a ceramic material, which is a brand new material that will have the capacity of being magnetized. This magnetized casing will help to control the structural energy that's in the center. Now, when you've built your crystal rod, which is made of all these components of the central core, and basically and functions in exactly the same way, the way in which you molecularly build